got a few really nice side dishes that we're going to showcase here today. And we want to go ahead and, jump right into it. We've got some things we need to get in the oven here real quick. So I'm going to go ahead and get us right over to Sarah here. And then she's going to go ahead and get started with our first recipe so she can get it into the oven.
And we're going to jump right in. This is such a delicious custard. I hope you guys try this. It is amazing, and you're not going to be disappointed. So what we have here is a whole can of pumpkin puree. It's unsweetened. All that's in here is pumpkin. So make sure you get the correct one when you go into the store, because there is pumpkin pie filling sometimes, and you don't want that extra added sugar. So we're going to do 1 whole can of pumpkin puree. And if you grew pumpkins in your garden, you can, use fresh pumpkin. You would just have to bake it and puree it down first. So, but this is much quicker. So we have that. And I already separated the egg yolks. And for most of you, you probably know the whole old school, crack the egg and put it side to sides to get out the whites. And I save the whites for, I'm going to make a little, I'm going to have leftover quinoa, and I'm going to have some leftover squash. So I'm going to make a little scramble tomorrow morning. And then I have my egg yolks and my vanilla in here. Then I have 1 cup of full fat coconut cream or coconut milk in the can. It's just that Thai brand that's in the Thai Kitchens brand. And I have 1/4 cup plus 2 tablespoons of brown sugar erythritol. We like the Swerve brand. And a whole slew of yummy spices. So I have cardamom and ground ginger and cinnamon and nutmeg and a little bit of cloves. And I like to buy whole nutmeg pieces in the jar. They come in the jar. And some, you can't always find them, but I like to buy the whole little nutmeg pieces and then zest it, because it just has a fresher taste. So then we're going to pop over here, and I'll try not to get out of the camera here, and then just whip it up here. Start out slow so you don't get your cinnamon and spices all over the place. Get up to the sides. And there's some chunks of coconut in there, so we're going to have to turn this baby up high. I'm going to turn this off and just scrape the sides down to get that coconut that's come to the side there. And it's just a little serving. The little custard dishes we'll use are right behind me. I'll show you here in a minute. And for anybody who, pumpkin is considered a starch, you have to cook it in order to eat it, and that's how you would know. And for any of you who are really concerned with rises in blood sugar, like really, really sensitive to the smallest amount of carbohydrate, then, you might be able to enjoy a couple of bites of this, because there is some really nice healthy fat in here that will help stabilize. And of course, if you had it after dinner, with after you had your protein and some non-starchy vegetables, then that's gonna help further stabilize your blood sugars. Even though I can't hear myself talk, I think you guys can hear me. Good. Jen's giving me the nod. Okay, so I'm whipping this up really good. And I think the coconut chunks are almost mixed in. Okay. I like to slow it down and then pull it up to get some of that off. Okay. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to pull over my custard dishes. Now I have a large casserole dish, and what I've done is I've put a couple of cups of water in the bottom of this so that it steams the tops. Otherwise, just like a pumpkin pie or cheesecake, you're going to get little cracks on the top. And then Jen was nice enough to pre-butter the dishes for me. So now we're just going to dump some of this in there. And it might make a mess, but I'm going to try my best. And just, oops, see it. Some gets in there, but just divide it up. And last time I had a bunch of leftover, so we put a couple of extra ramekins in here, but I might not need them. So we might have to take them out. Now I'm not going to demo the coconut cream. Most of you have probably watched me demo that. So I can't have dairy, so I use coconut whipped cream instead of whipping cream for my topping. And what you want to do with that is you want to chill your bowl just like you would with whipping cream. And then you want to put the can of coconut cream in the refrigerator for at least 6 hours. Now, we always buy it at the store the morning of cooking class. So what we did is we put it in the freezer for probably for about a couple hours, and it worked really well. So we put 3 teaspoons of Lancanto maple syrup in there. Yes, it could be an alternative to pumpkin pie. It does. It has kind of a little bit of a, when it's warm, more of a, not liquidy, but it's more of a little soupy, custardy, pudding. Yeah. But then when it's cold, it has that pumpkin pie texture. Yeah. So if this could even be, yeah, you could probably use this recipe and use it for a pumpkin pie if you had a low carb crust. The nut crust that I'm making here in a minute will would work. Yep. So, yep. So I didn't add, oops, what did I do that for? So when I was testing this, I added a little bit of coconut water to it. So this is probably going to be a little thicker than the one I tested, but it's going to be a little bit more spicy, which I wanted. So it didn't quite fit. Oh, that's why, because I filled up the other custard dishes. And I have to tell you guys that it has been quite a morning getting here. It's been pretty comical. And then when we got here, I was using the sink and water started spraying everywhere. It was pretty funny. But we're going to put this in the oven for 40 minutes, I believe I said. Yep. All right. So that is going to cook. We are doing great on time. I think we're even ahead of schedule, what we planned. So we're going to cut to commercial break. I'm going to clean this up. I'll bring out the stuff for the cupcakes and we'll get that going. And Jen is going to give you a little bit of cool information. I don't know what she has planned, but it's going to be amazing.
It's a surprise. Actually, before we get to that, Anne was wondering, can these be frozen once they're cooked?
I don't see why not. Yeah, but they would be in the custard dish. And I don't think they would crack in the freezer. So yeah, I think they would be pretty good frozen. Yeah, because it makes quite a bit, right? So if you're not making a lot, if you don't have a lot of people coming over for Thanksgiving, then you would want to freeze them and save them for later for sure. That's a great idea. We should have froze one and tested that out. We froze some other things this time because, well, we'll talk about that when we get there.
Yeah. Yes, and we don't have a calorie count for those, do we?
We do not. We were going to do a little comparison, but it has been crazy at work. But for a half a cup of this, it's 11 carbohydrates, so not too bad. I don't think you'd be even using a half a cup per custard. It would probably be less than that. And then the erythritol is pretty much zeroed out. And then you have the spices, and then the coconut milk is full fat. There's no sugar in there at all. It's unsweetened. And that healthy fat is going to be good for you from the coconut. So all in all, I mean, it's probably less than 10.
I would think so. Yeah.
Yeah. And because the little custard dish, there was, I don't know
Well,
how
those
much,
are
how
probably
many
maybe like
there's.
3 ounces. I think you had
Yeah.
11 of them when you finished filling them all
Okay.
in. So yeah, it's going to be pretty low carbohydrate
Mhm.
at least.
Yeah. And now the calories from the coconut milk, I mean, it's the healthy fat, so you might get a little bit of calories, but remember this is a whole food option. So it's going to create a more slow blood sugar response if you're concerned with that. But if you're very, very sensitive, and as another dietitian I was listening to yesterday, she said you can't even look at an apple with your blood sugars raising. If you're super sensitive to carbohydrates, then maybe just a couple of bites for you. But overall, it's going to be super low carb, and you're going to have this after dinner, possibly, or maybe with breakfast with a protein on the side the next day. So it's going to be good. And there's lots of potassium in pumpkin, and there's even a little bit of iron and calcium, and a lot of other minerals and vitamins that aren't even listed on the can. So yeah.
All
So
right.
I'm gonna get this
We're
going
cutting
for the.
away. That's
What was
right.
that?
We're cutting away.
Yeah, we're
You can
cutting away.
stop talking now. It's my turn.
Are you gonna keep me on the? Oh, there we go. Good.
So, so yeah, let's go ahead and hop in here, kind of almost like we're starting. So just, for those of you who maybe are here for the first time or haven't been here with us too many times, we do normally start at 11 o'clock, and normally we have a little bit more of an intro and in a couple minutes of that, but we hopped right into the recipes right away just because of the timing of getting things cooked and in the oven by the end of class. So Heather, don't worry, you are in good shape. We just mixed it up a little bit today. So a few announcements before I hop right into a little bit of information on that custard. Just make sure that when you want to attend any of these classes that you are signed up for them. So you have to be signed up for each individual class, and that's something that you could check by looking at your MyChart account and making sure that you are actually signed up for every cooking class or healthy living or support group, whatever it might be. That's our system for knowing who wants to come to class and who gets sent the link through their email. So, so make sure you're always checking on that. Any changes or anything like that are always going to be reflected there in that MyChart account. So, but we are good to go. We've got cooking class this month. We're going to do some fun things next month in cooking class. So I think you all are going to enjoy what we've got going on here today. So let's take a look at this spiced pumpkin custard with maple coconut cream. I know we do a lot of coconut because of course Sarah's little tum tum, but certainly for the most part, if you don't like coconut or can't have coconut because you're allergic, most of the time your standard whipping cream is going to be a fine alternative. So go ahead and feel free to make that adjustment as you need to. Now, when we're talking about custards, of course, custards are just kind of a thick, rich, creamy, usually a sweet dessert, sometimes savory, and typically it's the mixture of the eggs and the yolks and the milk and the cream, and then any flavors like vanilla, cinnamon, those kind of things, where we get this really nice, beautiful, typically dessert. And the egg in there is what's really going to help that thicken up. So very important that we have the eggs, many times whole eggs. In fact, usually that's how it works with a baked custard, which tends to solidify once cooled. For example, a creme brulee is going to be a custard. We just sprinkle the sugar on top and fire that sucker up. Get a nice little crust on the top of that. But you can also do stovetop custard, so you don't have to put it on all the little ramekins and put it in the oven. There are stovetop versions, and you can cook it and thicken it nice and gently that way and still get a nice something kind of special and a treat. And then you could go ahead and dish that out how you want to. One of the cool things about custards is they're kind of old school. They've been around for a very long time, dating back to the Middle Ages. And so custards have been around. It's a good, solid, long-term dessert that we can enjoy. And Sarah was able to put a really nice holiday spin on it with the pumpkin and the spices. So speaking of the spices, let's go ahead and talk about the cardamom. We've talked about a lot of other spices in class today, or in classes over time, but cardamom isn't one we've used a lot. It's actually a spice that originates out of India, but we kind of have it worldwide now. And as with typically all spices, it is going to be a high antioxidant addition to your diet. So, Sarah and I are going to talk to you about whole foods, and we're going to talk about getting your plant foods in. And the spices and herbs are going to be one of those categories within your plant foods where you can not only add a lot of flavor, but you get to add a lot of health benefit as well. So cardamom and a lot of these other spices are going to give you a lot of antioxidants, which are going to protect from inflammatory diseases, which we seem to have plenty of here in our society. And cardamom specifically has traditionally been used as a digestive aid, may possibly be useful against protecting against ulcers and support healing of ulcers. So again, I think it just kind of always goes back to that, let's put all nice real foods, flavorful foods in front of us, because they all have life-giving and sometimes somewhat healing properties when we eat them in real food, when we eat them consistency. They have a nice synergy when we put them all together with the foods. And so it just kind of always comes back to that. Now I want to touch on the Lakanto brand product that we use. That was the monk fruit that we used to sweeten this. And you're going to see us use that. It's not the only sweetener we use in class. We use the Swerve quite a bit as well, which is an erythritol-based sweetener, which is very good for your gut. And with erythritol sweeteners, you're typically going to see carbohydrates there, but because it's a sugar alcohol, those calories or those sugars don't actually get absorbed. So it ends up being a net zero in the end. So that ends up being a really useful sweetener. So we like the Swerve, but we'd like the monk fruit as well. And the monk fruit is prized for its sweetness. It was founded, I don't know, hundreds, thousands of years ago by monks. And so, of course, now recently in the past few decades, we've kind of found it and started using it as well. It does have a glycemic score of 0. So if you think about a glycemic score at all in any of your food choices, it's going to be a zeroed out option here as well. And the nice thing about monk fruit, unlike stevia, is you don't get that after flavor, that kind of bitter aftertaste that we can get with stevia, especially if we kind of use stevia a little bit heavy-handed, if you will. So that is going to be one of the nice things here about the monk fruit. And it can be a cup for cup swap with sugar. So pretty much any recipe that you use, you should be able to just straight swap it out for sugar. And so the nice thing, of course, about that is that we get the bulk that comes with it. Sometimes we swap sweeteners and maybe we get the sweetness, but we can't get the bulk that we need in certain recipes. And that's where the Swerve and, of course, the monk fruit ended up coming in really handy. Jeanette, we like the monk fruit too. It's really awesome. And they have several different products. They have the white sugar sweetener. They have a golden monk fruit sweetener, which is a little bit more of that brown sugar kind of a vibe. They also have sugar-free maple syrups, which oddly enough, my daughter likes better than real maple syrup, but that doesn't hurt my feelings at all. So she likes to use that. And they have some other products on their website. I think they have a brownie mix, and they have some granola mixes. So, so you've got some kind of nice products there that you could certainly look at. And we can see the sweetener and the maple syrup in stores. So like Walmart, Winco, I'm seeing those particular products from Lakanto on the shelves. So you can order it online, but you can also go to most of your typical grocery stores these days and find that there. All right, so are we ready to move on here? Okay, hold on. Let me turn your mic back on, and then let me get you into the videos again.
Eddie, so you would find monk fruit sweetener in the sugar aisle. So there's in the sugar aisle, there's a little section that has erythritol and monk fruit and the stevia and all of those sugar substitutes. So it's going to be in that aisle. The Lakanto brand has a red label, so that might be how you could find it quicker. But yeah, in that section, in that aisle where all the spices and sugars and flours are. Okay, let's get going on this cupcake. It's delicious. So we wanted to do a little low carb play on sweet potato pie. And I kind of came up with this, well, Jen helped me talk through it actually. We were just talking through it at work, and we were really excited about it. So in my house, we do the whole cranberry yam bake where we do the chopped up yams, and then we put the cranberries in the casserole dish. And then we do like a crust, a crisp crust on top. Now, back in the day, we used to put marshmallows on top, but we don't do that anymore. Sometimes I still do that for my older son. But the little one doesn't like marshmallows, and I don't like them either. So we decided to make a little cupcake pie, and we took 1 head of cauliflower and then about 1.5 pounds of yam, and we put it in the old trusty Instant Pot for about 10 minutes with a cup of water at the bottom. And then you pull it out, and some people have the steam basket. I didn't have a basket, but I had the grate at the bottom, so I was just really careful, and then you just use a slotted spoon to get it out of the water. Then I chilled it in the refrigerator, and now we're going to just add the all the ingredients. So this is pretty quick. It's not simple tasting by any means, but not a lot of ingredients, which is kind of nice. But it's erythritol, the brown sugar again, and then cinnamon and nutmeg. And this had a little moisture in the bottom, so we're going to scrape all of that goodness out. And again, I zested the nutmeg fresh, and it just gives it that extra aromatic flavor and smell. So it's because it's so aromatic, it's just going to be a lot more flavorful. And that's why I like the little nutmeg pods. So next time at commercial break, I'll grab them and show you. And then I did 3 eggs and some more vanilla in this, and 3 whole eggs with the yolks and the whites. And then we're going to see how this goes. If this isn't liquidy enough, fluffy enough, we're going to add a little bit of coconut water left over from the coconut cream, which I realize now that I didn't finish talking about the coconut cream, so I'll kind of talk through that while I'm making blending this up. But with the coconut cream, you refrigerate it, and then the solid part of the coconut cream is on top, and then the liquid is at the bottom. So you have to be careful not to mix them up, and that's why you want it refrigerated, part of the reason. So when you spoon it out, you just want to be really, really careful not to mix them together. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to, oh, that brown sugar is really, really packed in there. I'm going to blend this up first so it's all nice and combined. But this isn't going to be the only thing I'm going to want to do. I'm going to come back behind this with the emulsion blender, and then really fluff it up, because you know how cauliflower stems can be. And you can't even taste the cauliflower in here with all the other ingredients. It tastes just like a sweet potato pie, but with a lot less carbohydrates. So now I'm going to come in there, and I'm going to grab the little spatula and pull down the sides. And I forgot to grab my emulsion blender, so I'll go grab that. Dun, da, da, da. So this is going to make it really nice and fluffy. Those eggs are going to fluff up, and along with the potato and the cauliflower. Oh, that's a hard one. Okay, this is on good. And you guys, I didn't look to see how to use this first. Okay. So I'm just going to get in there and fluff it up until it looks nice and fluff, like almost like a whip. So it's going to take a minute here. And why that's fluffing, let's talk about what we did with the crust. So the crust, again, was just 3 simple ingredients: pecans and brown sugar, erythritol, and cinnamon. Oh, and butter. And so what we did was we put them in a food processor, and then put butter and all the ingredients in there and crumbled them up. So very, very delicious. And then so we didn't have a cupcake pan. I full disclosure, forgot my cupcake tins at home. So what we did was we put them in the custard cups and pressed them in. So now I'm going to have to be really, really careful when I'm spooning these in because they're liners without a without a tin. So we'll see how that works. But it's really, really good. You could even, gosh, I would like to make that into a little crisp cookie, but how would we bind it up more? Well, Jen can't really hear me. Yeah, Pris. So I'm scraping it. That's why I like these emulsion blenders. So if you don't have an emulsion blender, then you'd probably want to put this in a food processor, which would skip the need for that. These are fluffy. I don't have to put any of that water, coconut water in here. Get all that goodness out. I don't want it to go to waste. All right, so I'm actually going to come back over here. Now you cook these both at 350, so that's the nice part. And I'm just going to go very carefully. So I've never actually put filling into cupcake liners without cupcakes. So this might be really comical. So we'll see. It's nice and fluffy. Bloop, put right on top. And so we pressed the crumble down and baked it for 25 minutes, 20 minutes? 20 minutes. And then it's still a little crumbly, but then we're going to bake it for an additional, well, I'll tell you in a minute. I don't want to make a big mess. An additional amount of time, and then it will get nice and crispy and delicious. So this could have made a little bit more, and these would freeze nicely. So you can see all of that sweet potato and the cauliflower. I mean, it's divided into what would be like probably 18 or 20. And we'll probably save this and throw it in some cupcake liners. And then we're going to pop it in the oven. Actually, hold on. I could put some more in there. It might fluff up, but then it will sink down. Okay, so yeah, I think so, because the stuff is, the vegetables are really, really. Oh. So someone wants to know if we can use a blender instead of a food processor or the emulsion blender. And I would think that you would be able to do that, yes. I would probably do the hand blender or like the hand mixer first. Or if you have like a KitchenAid or something, that would probably work as well. All right, so now we're going to put these in the oven, and we are making great timing. Well, I just didn't separate. So I think they'll be able to, yeah, okay.
We're going to make it work. I didn't have my mic on, but I was laughing at Sarah. I don't know if y'all could hear that.
Okay, that's
there
perfect.
We go.
Now we have 2 different timers going. I'm going to set this for 20 minutes. 25 minutes.
All right.
Okay, and now we're going to get the topping going, and this is delicious too.
And while she's getting that going, I did post something in the chat here, because sharing is caring, everyone. So as you're watching and thinking, If there is a favorite shortcut tip for holiday cooking that you want to share, you guys can go ahead and start popping those into the chat as well, because I'm sure we would all love some tip from someone else that makes our lives a little easier. So as you think of them, go ahead and put those in there.
Okay, and also as another reminder, if you haven't heard, we're doing in our support group on the second Wednesday of December, we are doing a low carb holiday recipe swap. So if you're signed up for that class, please email the bariatric support email and send us one of your favorite recipes. And it's just for us. So if it's homemade, then that's great. Or if it's off a different website that you found, that's okay too. We're not selling it or just distributing it to other people. It's just for us. So Maggie will compile those and we'll share the different recipes in the support group on the second Wednesday of the month. And then if anybody has anything that they would like us to modify, we did that last time a couple months ago and it worked. It was a lot of fun. So you could send us that recipe too and say, hey, really love this. How would you make this a little bit more low carb or sugar free or bariatric friendly? So feel free to do that. Okay, so I'm going to dump in some cranberries. This is 2 cups of cranberries. And of course, we put it in a white plastic container, which is probably going to stain, but that's okay. And we did 2 tablespoons of butter, and now I'm going to turn that down a little bit. And these are going to cook down. I'm going to get these nice and warm. And we have cinnamon and fresh squeezed oranges from little cutie oranges, excuse me. And that's our sweetener in this. And you're probably thinking, you said not to use juice, right? Because of the concentration of carbohydrates and juice because we've removed the fiber. And this is 2 cups of carbs, 3 little cutie oranges, or 2 cups of carbs, 2 cups of cranberries. And then this is going to have just a dollop of the cranberry topping on top of your sweet potato cupcake. So it's all the carbohydrates are dispersed out over, what was that, 16? It would have been 16, but we ate the crust. So now we're going to put this orange juice in there and then it will simmer down. So we'll want to turn that up high. And then it will become like a little puree and there's a stem or something. And then this will reduce. So in here, so normally I would have put like a little cinnamon in there, but we combined them and I didn't want to put the coconut in there to the very end, but it adds just a nice little nutty texture on top of the jellied cranberries. And so it just adds a really nice texture. But if you're not a fan of coconut, you could leave it out. Or if you like other nuts, you certainly could throw those in last minute to give some of that texture. Like, there was pecans in the crust, so you could chop up some pecans and, it's just like half a cup of the coconut. So you could do a half a cup of pecans and do that in the last minute. So this is going to simmer down and we're making great timing. Does anybody have any questions for us? Oh, nice. Let's hear about it. Mm-hmm. Oh, well, you should step away for a little bit. And there's only an echo when Jen has her microphone on when she's close to me, we found out from Shirley. So she's going to sit down and say that because I can't really read that. The lighting in this room is kind of crazy and it makes me go blind.
And we're sort of middle-aged, so that might have something to do with it. But we have a lot of preppers. So when it comes to tips for shortcuts and preparing ahead of time, people just prepare ahead of time. Like people are in there doing things the day before, the night before. getting everything pre-made. So it sounds like all you really need to do is just kind of warm things up or just cook them because they're already assembled. And then the turkey, I guess you just toss that sucker in the smoker, huh? That'd be an awesome turkey. Of course, you could just toss it in the oven. Actually, I think the turkey is not really the harder part. It's all of the other things that go with it that we have to put together for that big meal. So,
Yep.
so those are some good tips.
I like to do that cranberry yam bake that I was talking about the night before, and I'll bake the yams. So sometimes, you know, when we were younger, we used to get the canned yams. I just like the texture of the fresh, and so we'll bake them the night before and leave the skins on, because I don't know if you've ever baked a yam before, but the skin gets nice and loose and will just peel right off, so you don't have to use a peeler. So there's a little chef tip from Chef Sarah, and then chop it all up, and then the crisp that I use. So it's typically you know, a half a cup of flour, a half a cup of brown sugar, a half a teaspoon of cinnamon, half a cup of oatmeal. So I'm going to add this in now. Mix that up. So that's like the normal crisp, right? I like to add nutmeg as well. Oh, the cinnamon's not quite mixing as well as it would have been when it was liquidy, but that's okay. It's Jen and I are eating this, and some gal pals from work. So I'm going to turn this down. So you can see this is a nice texture. So what I do now instead, because I can't have flour, and sugar doesn't make me feel that great, so I would use brown sugar erythritol, and I use almond flour instead of regular flour. And then I'll chop up, instead of oats, which last year I did a little bit of oats, and then some nuts, but I'll typically chop up a bunch of like pecans and walnuts, really rough chop it, and put it in with the almond flour. And that way it gives a nice texture. And then of course cut it in with butter and cinnamon and all that jazz. So that's a low carb version of a crisp crust, and it works out pretty well. Okay, so you can see that this is nice and jellied. So we're going to put this on, floop. And it has a nice little texture. Now I'm going to put this in. There's 11 minutes left of the custard. We're making good timing, you guys. We're going to put this in the fridge for a minute. And it is so good. This even turned out better than the one that I made before. So see that texture from the coconut? It's really nice. So again, if you don't like coconut, or you're allergic, which I know some of you are or don't like it, rough chopped nuts would work really well. So we're going to put that in the refrigerator, and we're going to cut to commercial break, and I'm going to bring out the stuff for the salad, and we'll plate everything up. And then you notice we don't have any protein in this today. Last year we had little Cornish game hens that were delicious. So I'll throw that recipe in for any of the new people that weren't here last year into the holiday recipes. But it was pretty darn good, don't you think, Jen? Little Cornish game hen.
Yeah, they were really good.
Yeah. So we thought, you know, most people do turkey or ham for Thanksgiving, and so we wanted to give you some different options for sides.
All right, let's cut to commercial break.
And we're out of here.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, Donna, I was waiting for Sarah to finish up there before I went to you. So yeah, go ahead and ask your question.
I don't know if you could see my chat, but I don't have a pressure cooker. Can you steam on, if you have a steam pots to steam
Sure.
on the stovetop?
Yes. Yeah, that's what I would do if you don't have a pressure cooker or an Instant Pot or something of that nature. I think the easiest thing to do would be to, put the potatoes or the cauliflower or really whatever you're trying to steam into some kind of basket that sits over the pot of boiling water, and try and put a lid on top of that. And that'll cook them up just fine. Might take a little bit longer than the Instant Pot because it is a pressure cooker, but you'll still get the same result in the end.
Can you see my questions on chat?
Let's see here. I'm not seeing yours. I'm seeing other people putting stuff in there, but for some reason, Donna, I'm not seeing your name popping in there. So that's okay. If you don't mind raising your hand, then I can always just call on you whenever we have a little break to get to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Okay, you guys, so we are moving on. Now we've had some good shares, and yes, Kelsey, of course you had a bowl, although it would have been kind of funny if she was putting it straight into her hand. Kelsey didn't see you had a bowl in your hand, and so it just looked like you were dumping it into your hand. you were scooping it out. So, I mean, as weird as this day has gone, that might have actually happened, right? Just having things happen all over the place. So, oh, yeah. So Sarah's giving me a little bit more of input here. You wouldn't want to boil the potatoes or the cauliflower. That's going to get things really, really mushy. So you would want to definitely do some kind of steam, which would be the best way to go ahead and cook those. So let's talk a little bit about this low carb sweet potato, cranberry pie, cupcake, pecan crust extravaganza that we have going on here. And I got to tell you guys, I was really impressed when Sarah brought them in and we got to taste test them. I was really impressed with how smooth it was. It was extremely smooth. There were no chunks in those things. So it was really fantastic texture. And there's no way anyone would know that there was cauliflower in there. I know sometimes y'all are thinking, yeah, sometimes cauliflower things kind of taste like cauliflower. But in this particular case, the cauliflower was a small enough portion with the sweet potatoes that you couldn't tell it was there. And then with all the other flavorings that she put in there. So it was a really nice product in the end. I was really impressed with it. So let's talk about sweet potatoes, right? So potatoes, right? This like one of the vegetables that y'all are supposed to avoid, or it's the high carb vegetable, all those kind of things. And it's true when you are in a position where you are trying to heal your metabolism, lose some weight, reverse diabetes, any of those kind of conditions that are somewhat attached to a bit of a broken metabolism or some kind of blood sugar irregularity, then we have to look at trying to pull back on the carbohydrates in our diet, because that is one of the main things in our diet that causes our blood sugar to go up. There are other things that do that too, like having a lot of stress or not sleeping very well. But when it comes to our food choices, the carbohydrate foods are going to be the ones that do that the most. And then within that, the more processed that food is, if it has carbohydrates in it, the more likely it's going to push that blood sugar up more rapidly and to a higher number. So there's some varying degrees here. So we want to try and make sure that we're being mindful of the fact that, yes, potatoes are something that we need to maybe pull back on or keep to a pretty minimal or just occasional part of our diet, but at least we have a whole food product here with our sweet potatoes, even with the cranberry, and that really makes a huge difference in how much our blood sugar tends to pop up just for your average human being. As far as sweet potatoes go, they're actually only very distantly related to the potato. They're actually part of the morning glory family, which I thought was kind of odd. But if you see a picture of one, or if you've ever grown them, the tops look like morning glories. It's kind of pretty. So they're actually a different family than your standard potato. And people can eat the green tops, although I'm not sure that many of us do, but you can. Most of the time they're going to be that orange, but they can be white, they can be pale yellow, they can even be red or pink. So you've got some different color spectrums there. And generally, you're going to see them in two types. You're going to be seeing that darker skin with the orange flesh sweet potato like we're using here in class, or you're going to see more of a golden skin, more of a pale flesh, kind of a sweet potato. And so what's going on with this whole sweet potato and yam situation, right? So they're actually two different things. And yam is not even in the same family. They are both root vegetables. So we are eating the roots of both of those, but they're technically two different things, and they get confused with each other and actually are often mislabeled in stores, in grocery stores, to the point actually now where the word yam is used as a marketing term to distinguish between two types of sweet potatoes in the store. So you're actually going to see sweet potatoes and sweet potatoes in those two different boxes, one being the golden one being the pale yellow one. and they're actually both sweet potatoes, but they might be labeled as a sweet potato and a yam, just to kind of help people differentiate from what they're actually seeing, because people will look at that and say, sweet potato, aren't they two different things? And they're not, but they're two different types. A yam is actually more starchy, a little bit more bland. They're a little bit tougher. The skin is very tough. And actually, we don't really see those in America. They're just not found commonly in grocery stores. So if you see the word yam in a grocery store, you're not probably looking at a yam. It's probably the other type of sweet potato. But potato, either way, they're both good and they can both be useful. So so enjoy with those. And then the nut crust, I wanted to touch on that because Sarah was giving some great thoughts on crumbles and then the nut crust. And it's a great way to get kind of that nice crunchy sweet crust, get that kind of feel in with your dessert if you want to, without having quite as much carbohydrate, quite as much processed ingredients. White flour is a highly processed ingredient. And so we're always trying to minimize those kind of additions in with our recipes. And that's where the nut crust can come in, which of course is going to be a little bit higher in protein, a little bit higher in some healthy fats than what your standard white flour is going to be as well. So it's good if you can, if you're not allergic or you know, happen to dislike a whole lot. It's a great way to get a similar kind of product with something that's just kind of a step healthier for you, even if we're talking about something in the dessert. You know, one thing I've noticed is some of the companies have come out with some nut crusts that are pre-made, which would seem awesome, but they do have the white flour in them. So you wouldn't want to think that what you're purchasing in the store is necessarily going to be essentially the same thing from what you might be making at home, although more convenient for sure. If you have the energy, the know-how, the will, it certainly would be better to make it at home. Then you have full control over the quality of the ingredients, the quality of, you know, our ingredient has butter. The ones in the stores are going to use a pretty low quality oil. Of course, this is all going to be nuts. The ones in the store have the flour in them. So they're usually in the stores are going to have basically just plain sugar in them to sweeten, whereas we can add some kind of alternative sweetener to keep that sugar content down a bit. So I think Sarah's ready to go. We've got one more good recipe here that we are going to go ahead and showcase here for you, and then we'll be wrapping it up. So let me get you on the screen here, Sarah Bear. Here it comes. It's coming. There we go.
Welcome back. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started on this delicious salad, and I might be using my hands a little bit, so I'm going to go ahead and wash them. I washed them before all the recipes, but want to make sure they're very nicely clean because Jen's going to be eating this salad, and you know, we don't want to spread germs. So I'm doing the ABCs in my head to make sure they're nice and washed, and I'm, you know, scrubbing like a surgeon underneath my fingernails. So just FYI. So we're going to get started on this delicious salad. It's very nice harvest salad with lots of different things that we normally don't cook with, but it's Thanksgiving, and we wanted to give you guys options. So what I have here is some lightly seasoned quinoa. And I have a clay pot, so I like to do any grain that I'm making in the oven in my clay pot. So it's like cup for cup, just like rice would be. But quinoa, Jen's, I think, is going to talk a little bit about quinoa, so I won't waste my breath now. I'll let her save that for her. But what we did was we did a little salt and a little bit of sage and thyme just to have a nice added flavor. It's just going to be mostly a garnish on the salad versus a main. And so we just wanted to add those different layers of flavor. And then we have a butternut squash here. And this is also flavored with sage, salt, and olive oil. And I roasted it in the oven. And there's a lot of squash that comes from a butternut squash, right? So we froze this and we froze the quinoa. And they both still have a delicious texture. I'm going to go ahead and check my custard and see what's up with that. And I think I'm going to leave it in with the sweet potatoes for 5 more minutes, and then that will be that. Okay, so we froze them in a, airtight container so that it didn't get all frostbitten. And the flavor and the texture is still really delicious. And we're not going to cook them again. It's going to be cold on top of a salad. So it really worked out. Now, I'm not sure if you guys have cut a butternut squash before, but how I like to do it is, and I put the directions in the recipes, is I cut off the ends on each side. And then I peel it with a big wide peel, wide, like one of those metal ones, not, well, I don't have it, not like the regular peeler, but it's like, it's kind of wide this way, so it really works out quickly. Let me cancel that. And then cut it in half this lengthwise and scoop out the seeds. And then if you want to really get, waste not, want not, you could clean the seeds from the pulp and roast them and have that squash seed, which is kind of nice. And then you just cut it into small little chunks. So you can see how the little bite-sized pieces are, or maybe you can't, but I'll show you here in a minute when Jen comes over here. And so you just kind of really cut it lengthwise and then crosswise, and then you have a butternut squash. So I'll put this back here. And we really like arugula. It has a nice peppery taste. I'm not sure. Is anybody an arugula fan? Anybody? You can let us know. And I'm going to layer this. Yeah, woohoo, arugula, peppery. Okay, so I'm going to rip this off and just do some layering here. So it's, because there's nothing worse than mixing it up afterwards and then it's, not, it all sinks to the bottom. So we're just going to do that. Oh, but I didn't cut the pear yet, so that's okay. I'll cut it at the end. That will go on top. And then we'll do this. And then when you roast, any vegetable, get some of it charred on some sides, and then that way it has that added flavor as well. Is anybody going to smoke their turkey this year? Anybody? Nice. Okay, so that's that. Woohoo! Yeah, so we're a little sad because our in-laws don't have a smoker, and we're going to their house this year. Well, it's going to be fun. Don't get me wrong, but we usually smoke our turkey. So there's that, and then whoop, 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 whoop. We're going to save this for whatever, and then put that aside. All right, so now I'm going to put this aside and chop this pear for you. And actually, you never know what you're going to get with a pear from when you order curbside pickup. And this one is actually okay. So we're just going to don't forget to do the claw. Huh? I have another timer. Jen's concerned about the desserts. Don't worry, I have timers. And then, yeah, and then you go this way. And don't worry, I already washed this pear. And it's kind of nice. Like last time I made this, the pear wasn't quite ripe. And I mean, like really sweet. And it was still really good. It had a nice texture to it. So there, and then I'm just going to come through and rough chop it. You want to save this for the last, unless you like squeeze some lemon juice on there, which would be good. Okay. So beautiful. Voila. And that took, did the butternut squash ahead of time. So you really could do this ahead of time to get everything except for the pear together. That way you can just throw it together, and it's nice harvest fall to go along turkey and whatever else you're having for Thanksgiving. And then our dressing is apple cider vinegar, fresh squeezed orange juice, olive oil. Okay. That's time. It's just like Thanksgiving, multitasking in the kitchen. Oops, I don't want to stop it. Delete. Okay. So put the oh. Yeah. That, and I don't have a, you know, when you're cooking multiple things in the oven at one time, you do need to check to make sure it comes out clean. I don't have a toothpick with me. We're going to throw that in the oven for a little bit longer, but that's done. The custard's done. And, you know, because it would have been just fine, you guys. However, we had both of these things in the oven going at the same time. Then all of a sudden you have things taking a little bit longer. Okay, so the thyme and salt. And then we have cranberry puree that I already did up, and the directions are in there for you. And you can use your emulsion blender, but we're using our bullet blender because the cranberries, you know, are still a little chunky, but we want it nice and thoroughly blended together. So make sure that's on good and tight, and then you just blend it up. And voila, it has nice, my husband's grandma's dish. The wooden bowl was touching the hot, and that was my husband's grandma's salad bowl. So there you go. It's nice and blended, and it tastes really good. It's very thymy. Yes. Yep. It's perfect. And then it's very delicious on the salad. So we're going to cut to commercial break. I'm going to clean up. I'm going to plate this stuff, bring out the coconut cream, dollop it on top of the custard, and show you how everything looks when it's done. So we'll be right back from commercial break, and we'll be just a couple minutes.
Yeah, we only got a couple minutes left. We got to wrap this sucker up here. So I saw some interesting things in the chat. I wasn't able to comment right away, but Lorena, yeah, you've got some challenges there with your vegetarian family and lack of spices except salt. Man, that's a bummer. But your idea of using some broth flavored with vegetables and then adding some nuts and nutritional yeast, I think that's going to be a great way to add some flavor and some texture and some interest. So good on you for, you know, coming up with something that's going to make it work. And so again, you guys, you have all of the copies of the recipes. They were attached to that email, but just to kind of review the vinaigrette, the ingredients were 1/3 cup of the cranberries, the juice of 2 oranges, 2 teaspoons of orange zest, some apple cider vinegar, 1/4 cup, 1/2 cup of olive oil, and then we had a teaspoon of thyme and a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And then you just blend that up. And yeah, if you don't have a bullet blender like we did, you can just use a regular blender. That's not a big deal. Just any way that you can get that all blended and broken up together, I think is going to be just fine. So no worries there. Yeah, so give that a try. When Sarah brought that one in, that also tasted awesome. So that worked out very, very well. Let's just really briefly talk about this salad here while Sarah's getting everything dished up, this harvest salad with cranberry thyme vinaigrette, which I think sounds very holiday-ish and romantic, you know, harvest salad. Sounds really nice. So we did add some things in there to kick up a little bit of the interest, right? It's not just a plain salad. We've got the butternut squash in there that's adding some interest, a little bit of different texture, a little bit of flavor, but we're not doing a ton of it. So we're adding a little starch with that. But again, you got some other good nutrients because that's a whole food that's been added into that. In fact, a ton of vitamin C, which is great for your skin and for just fighting off any kind of infection because it's an antioxidant. So definitely a good addition there. And then let's talk about the quinoa or the quinoa, depending on how you choose. I'm just kidding. Quinoa is not the right way to say it. Quinoa, it's an old grain. I guess we'll say an ancient grain from the Incas. They're the ones that first started that craze, and we call it a grain. It's technically a seed, but so we call it an ancient grain, and that's what you're going to see it referred to. And it's grown like a grain, and then the seeds are what we actually eat from that. So that's what we call the quinoa, but it ends up acting like a grain. We cook it like a grain. We flavor it and season it and use it like a grain. And so it has that grain-like type of quality to it. And it is still going to be a little bit higher in carbohydrate than we would want to use very often. And so that's why we used it as part of the salad, just one of the ingredients. It was about a 1/4 cup in the whole thing. So it adds some of that nutrition again without really, really driving up the carbohydrate load. But good news again, it's a whole food. It's one of the higher protein, quote unquote, grains that we can consume. It has some fiber in it as well. High in copper, high in magnesium. So it can be a good addition to mix in with a lot of those other dishes that you might be thinking about consuming. So, just a really, really good addition there. So I think we're getting pretty close here to wrapping it up. Are we about ready? I think our sweet potato cupcakes are trying to finish in there. So one thing, I'm going to ask a few questions here while she's finishing that up. So first question, this is trivia. Okay, so this is for the win, you guys. First of all, how long was the first Thanksgiving celebration? What was the length of time that the Pilgrims celebrated Thanksgiving? Anybody? Best guesses? It was not measured in hours, I'll tell you that. Oh, 4 days. That's a good guess. Well, it was 3 days they spent doing that. Oh, a week. That would have been a fun party, right? Yeah, not quite a week, but 3 days is still a pretty long party, right? And when we're talking about the Pilgrims, does anyone remember the name of the Native American friend who helped the settlers settle in? He was actually an interpreter. Do you remember his name? Think back to your grade school days, probably, of that friendly Indian who helps them. If you don't remember, I didn't remember either. No one. We got some thinkers. Squanto. Do y'all remember Squanto? Yeah. He was the guy. So anyway, and oddly enough, the Pilgrims probably didn't have turkey on their first Thanksgiving, but whatever. That's what we do now. All right, are we ready to go?
All right, so Jen's going to come closer here, and here's the texture of our coconut cream for anybody who hasn't seen us make it before. And again, it was chilled in a glass and then chilled beforehand and separated, and we're just going to do a dollop of that. Good dose of healthy fat on there. And then our little cranberry, just a little, whoops, it's a slippery meatball. Oops, Jen got more, so I better put a little bit more on mine. And then there you have it, a little cranberry topping for your sweet potato pie, and you have your whipped cream. And again, if you don't like coconut or are allergic, then you can do regular heavy whipping cream. It's low in carbohydrate as well. And then just a little bit of the maple and Kento and a little bit of cinnamon, and there you go. So I can't have dairy anymore. But both taste good. Dairy has some good health benefits to it, and so does coconut, and they're both full fat. So if you were to use a heavy whipping cream, that's full fat. It also has some good nutrients in it. So it's really a preference, or if you can't have dairy, then this is a great alternative. Yeah. And Donna has a question. Let's see.
Sorry, this goes back to the
You're welcome. Heather, I think I can see
Yes, go
spied
ahead,
now.
Donna. I can hear
to
you,
the
Donna.
pumpkin custard. You had a hand mixer, and then you said use a stand mixer. If you
Right.
don't have a
So what's the question?
stand mixer, if you don't have a stand mixer, can you use a blender?
Oh, so if you don't have a stand mixer, can you use a blender for it was the custard, right? Is that what you were asking, Donna?
Yes.
Yeah, that would,
Yes.
you want it nice and fluffy. So that would, the blender would get it nice and fluffy. Yep, that would work great. Yeah, great
Thank you.
question. Any other questions that we weren't able to get answered?
I don't think so.
Okay, so don't forget to send in your recipes to the bariatric support at slhs.org to share a low carb holiday recipe. And then say for recipe book or for modification if you want us to modify it in class. And then also we have our January Healthy Living series coming up after the holidays, and we're redoing the Tiny Habits workshop. So for any of you who took that with us, we're doing it again. And for those of you who don't know what that is, it is based off of BJ Fogg's Tiny Habit book. You don't have to run out and get the book if you don't want to, although it is an okay price on Amazon if you want to get it. But we are going to be going through the tools for that to show you how to build a habit. Very interesting. Talking about like kind of the psychology of how habits are formed, and then we also talk about how we can unravel or untangle an unwanted habit. That particular healthy living series is going to be an hour each class instead of a half an hour because of the workshop type nature of it. And so we hope that you can join us if you haven't joined us before, but it is very beneficial to learn about how to do the tiny habits. And Jen and I have both used the tools in it and have really quickly changed some habits. So we hope you can join us. Thank you.
All right, you guys have a good rest of your day. For those of you who want to leave, go ahead. I know we're a little over time.
Sorry, December cooking class is December 9th.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah.
Somebody just posted that. Maybe it was
Maggie. Oh, okay. All right, and then we got another, that's all right. We've got a hand. Oh, Kristen has a hand up. Kristen, what's your question? And if you're talking, I can't hear you yet. Oh, did she put it in the chat? Oh, is heavy whipping cream also a healthy fat is the question.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yes, it
is. A healthy fat. Yes, you betcha. You betcha.
All right, and then we also have, oh, Donna has another question. All right, Donna, what's your question?
Can you type in the name of that book you said?
Sure, I will type in the name of that book that Sarah was just mentioning. It's called Tiny Habits. I'm going to put it in here. By BJ Foggg is his last name. So it's Fogg with 2 G's. There you go. And it's a pretty easy read. It's not super duper complicated and high level and lots of big words. It's actually pretty good, simple explanations. So yes, who do we have here as well? Is it Terry?
Teresa.
Teresa. Oh, sorry, Teresa. Your name is so long, it's getting cut off on my screen. Teresa, what's your question or comment?
My son has celiac. Is he going to be able to eat most of these, or is that a totally different creature I'm going to have to deal with?
Gotcha. Your son has celiac, so is he going to be able to eat most of these recipes?
Oh, all of it.
Yeah, Sarah can't handle the things with the gluten in them, and that's the same. Yeah, that's the same part of the wheat or whatever grain it is that would bother someone with celiac. So yeah, you'd be able to use all of these recipes.
However, you just want to get, can they hear me? Yeah. So you would want to get all of the products that say gluten-free on them because sometimes they say on the container that it was processed in a facility that may had processed wheat or wheat flour. And celiac, individuals who have celiac, as you know, are very, very sensitive. So even if it was touching the wheat and it wasn't in the product, the residue from whatever they were processing is going to probably bother your son. And so you always want to make sure that you get things that are deemed gluten-free, even though some things are, say gluten-free, and you look on it's like corn tortillas. Well, yeah, it never had gluten in it to begin with. So sometimes things are marketing schemes, but in a case with someone with celiac, you always want to make sure that it says gluten-free so that it wasn't contaminated. Yep.
Is that a
Thanks.
satisfactory answer, Teresa? Yeah, Teresa. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
That's
All right.
really simplified things.
All right, you
Oh,
guys, we're
good.
going to eat. Our coconut cream is melted. It's going to be so delicious. I might put a couple of dollops of
Why not?
on it again.
Sounds
and then
great.
we're going to enjoy these desserts and have a salad and go home and have our protein.
That's right, you guys. All right.
Oh, really
okay.
quick, one more thing, and maybe Jen mentioned this, but quinoa, it is one of the only grains that is considered a complete protein, just so you know.
Oh, I didn't say that particular
Yeah.
detail.
So
All right.
peace out, you guys.
That's
See you
right.
next week, or see you next month in support group, or next week in Healthy Living Series. You'll see Jen. I'll be on vacay.
All right, y'all. See you next week. You and me. It'll be fun.
Bye, guys.
All right. Bye.